Would you buy a car from a guy like this? No, of course not. They look too fake, and that's just the key. A lot of people want a little bit of authenticity. You walk into the car lot, nothing worse than you're pulling up, you're just looking and browsing at a car next to you, sitting there in the car lot, and you just put the car in park. You basically just barely step out the door, and there's a car salesman on your heels waiting to ask, hey, can I help you? Is there anything you need? I've also seen the flip side where a lot of car salesmen, of course, profile you. You know, they look at that old beater car that you just got out of and you're in a BMW car lot and they don't even give you the second glance. It's unfortunate. Profiling works one way, another way. Of course, you can get way too much attention. But ultimately, how does buyers ultimately respond to these questions and these scenarios and some of these tactics of salespeople? They've heard just about everything. For example, if you've heard somebody say, as a salesperson, you've heard a customer like me walk in there and say, you know, I'm just looking. You know they hear that every single time. There's a huge majority of number of salespeople that take that translation, take that phrase that you just said, I'm just looking, and they turn it around and start asking you questions. Well, you know, how long have you had your car for? Have you been looking long? Are you inquiring about something unique? You know we have great incentives this month, but only this month. And they start throwing all kinds of information at you. Next thing you know, 3 hours later, after a little bit of negotiations, you drive out the car lot with a brand new car. It happens time and time and time again. But one thing that I found works like a charm, and other than the profiling piece, and I've been to that scenario where I walk in with an old pair of blue jeans and a gray hoodie, and I'll walk into a car lot, say something like a Mercedes, or certainly even something like, even more upscale, even Lamborghini, and you walk into the car lot, and the vast majority of the time they will leave you alone. That's one of the key ways, if you want to be left alone and you're shopping for something more pricey, more upscale, is to go in there and dress down the part. Dress down the part. That's going to be a surefire way to get salespeople off your back. If you're going in there and you just want to have a look, you definitely want to dress down. Because when you dress up, it's amazing. I've heard so many stories of people that don't have a pot to piss in. They'll wear a suit, they'll go down, and they're able to test drive a brand new Lamborghini. I've heard that, I've seen it, I've talked to people in that space. But obviously, you know, there's different scenarios, a way to handle this. But if you're one of these buyers and you are potentially in the market, but you don't like to be hassled, you know, a couple of other things I've heard, instead of, you know, I'm just kind of looking for now, I haven't really got started, because that's when they flip it and they start asking you a million questions. Next thing you know, you're signing on the dotted line. You're almost better off saying, yeah, you know, I do have a trade-in. Would you guys take a 1982 Pontiac Parisienne? Do you guys take one of those? Or, you know, it's in really good shape. It's only got 30,000 original miles. You going to give me a good dollar for that? Because I'm only going to trade it in if you're willing to take that on a solid trade. That's one way to get them off your back, is giving them an offer of a trade-in that's an absolute piece. Of course, the other thing is dressing down. I've already mentioned that. But another thing to get these salespeople off your back is quite easy. You basically say, look, my credit score? Yeah, I've got about his credit score. I think last time I checked, it was about 525, 540. It was somewhere in there. It's pretty good. I mean, it's really come a long way ever since those 2 repossessions. And, you know, that house foreclosure we had, that was already 6 years ago. So I'm sure it's off the bureau already by now. So then you go in there, because we know that car salesmen literally want to make a sale, not just to sell a car, but they also prefer to sell you financing, lease. That's where the mass majority of their kickbacks come from. That's where they make a lot of their money. A lot of times it's fixed points. They don't get a whole lot of money off of just the standard price. If you walk in there cash, the dealership's not making as much, and the salesperson's typically making even less. So if you're going in there, and the idea, of course, is them to try to push you into financing, and you come up with a storyline like, yeah, I just had 2 repossessions, but that's okay. I think, can we check my credit score anyway and see if you guys will approve me? That's one of the surefire ways to turn them away from you. So if you're looking at not buying a car from that salesperson and you strictly want to be left alone, there's a great majority of ways to do it. It's telling them how bad you are. It's hinting them at how poor your credit score is, or the garbage trade you have, or the fact that you only make, $16 an hour and you're shopping for a $125,000 truck. It's giving those stories, and that will eventually just kick them to the side. Most of these salesmen just don't want to bother with you at that point. I actually even had a response here recently. I walked into a Ford dealership, And I looked around, I saw this new truck. They asked me, hey, are you interested? What do you think? It was a nice lifted up, brand new Lariat truck that was parked out front, brand new. And he said, the first thing out of his mouth is, hey, have you heard about the incentives and the employee pricing? I said, yeah, that's cool. But do you have anything like base trim? Like, this is way too much money, way too much money. And then I started tricking him with a whole pile of different technical questions. Is this the 2.7 or is this the 3.5 in there? He says, well, it comes with the 3.5 or the 5 liter. I said, because I heard the 2.7 actually has an oil-fed pump, a belt. Is that true? They have a belt-fed oil pump? And is it true that they're failing? Like, there's quite a few of these failing? Go in there armed actually with some real technical questions. I promise you, and I've done this myself, just like that Ford salesman did. He spun and headed and hightailed. I said, oh, by the way, can I get a business card? He's, yeah, sure. And he hustled on out of there. He wanted nothing left to do with me. He said, you know what? And I'll also give my sales buddies over there a heads up that you don't want to be left alone, that you're just shopping on the lot. So it's pretty clear there's some great ways to get those salespeople off your back. And let's face it, when you're ready to buy, you're ready to buy. And nobody wants to be fast talked and swindled into buying that next overpriced vehicle. Of course, when you're ready, make sure you have the cash in hand. Remember the rules, no more than 4 years. Don't forget that 20% down and 4 years max. Like, remember those numbers, and those will keep you in good shape. Ideally, you spend cash, but negotiate based on financing. As long as you've got the caveat for a buyout after 1 month, then you can get the best buy-in price. And of course, you can cash out and pay cash. Ultimately, cash is king. We know that. But if you're tired of getting hassled and barraged by salespeople, there's definitely some better tactics than I'm just looking.